Welcome to the Divorce and Money podcast. My guest today is Susan Guthrie. Susan is one of the nation's leading voices in family law and mediation. With more than 30 years of experience as a top divorce attorney, mediator, and trainer, Susan has helped thousands of individuals and families navigate separation with dignity, clarity, and compassion. She is the creator and host of the award-winning Divorce and Beyond podcast. Susan has built one of the most trusted platforms for real conversations about divorce, healing, and new beginnings. Her expertise and approachable style have made her a sought-after media expert, featured on the Oprah podcast, News Nation, NBC's Chicago Today, and numerous other national and regional outlets. Susan's work bridges legal knowledge, emotional intelligence, and innovative thinking, helping people not only end their marriages more peacefully, but also begin in their next chapter with purpose. Let's begin. Marriage is about love. Divorce is about money. Without the right guidance, critical mistakes can have lasting financial consequences. That is where I come in. My name is Gabriella Martinelli, founder at Ever After Wealth. As a certified divorce financial analyst, I provide my clients financial clarity, strategic divorce planning, and long-term stability. On this podcast, I am sharing what you need to know about getting through a divorce, protecting your legacy, growing your wealth and assets post-divorce, and figuring it out what you really want in this next stage of life. Let's get started. Hi, Susan. Welcome to the Divorce and Money podcast. I am thrilled and so excited to have you here. I love the conversation we're going to have. I have been admiring you from afar for a very long time, and it's an honor that you're here with us today. So welcome.
Gabrielle, thank you so much for having me. It hasn't been that afar because I loved having you on Divorce and Beyond recently, but I'm delighted to be here on Divorce and Money, two topics we both love to talk about.
100% divorce and money. And that's it. And like my intro says, divorce is about money. In my world, I know there's other things there is about, but in my world is all about money. So Susan, I know I did a quick introduction, but what would you like my audience to know about you? That you want to make sure that if I didn't mention, they didn't miss something about you that you want them to know. What would that be?
Oh, that's such a kind question. I have been in the divorce world for over 35 years at this point. And I've been in a lot of different roles. I've been a divorce attorney, a divorce mediator, a divorce coach, and I speak on divorce all of the time. And as you know, have my podcast. And what I'm really passionate about, as are you, and one of the reasons we do our podcast, is people really need to know what they're getting into, because how you go through your divorce sets you up for your beyond. And if people go into it blind, that's where the mistakes happen. So I'm just delighted to have this opportunity to talk about divorce and money, divorce and education, divorce and empowerment. It's really just the key to having a good divorce.
Yeah, and information, because honestly, we live in this world where we have so much, there's internet, now we have AI, and I still think that there's a lot of misinformation, and a lot of the right information doesn't get to those individuals, couples that actually really need it to make these decisions, right? Because again, like you said, this changes your life. And doesn't matter how long you've been married, how old are you, how old are your kids, it will change your life. So these decisions are way too important just to leave to chance. So today we're going to talk about something very important, and is understanding the difference between the different processes, the ways that you can go through this process, right? Just top, mediation, collaborative, litigation. Those are big words. A lot of individuals don't really understand what those mean. But I would like for you to start explaining why the change. You were a mediator, you were a litigator, you did this for a very long time, you're an attorney, and then you became a mediator. And I would like to know what made you switch from one to the other. And it may not be this big aha moment for you. Maybe it was logistics, geography, etc. But I think it's very important to understand, because I think those are main of the big differences: litigation, mediation, and then of course we have collaborative, is all part of the divorce world, but they're so different among themselves.
They really are so different. But I will tell you, 35 years ago, when I got out of law school, although mediation and collaborative law existed, they were little tiny movements that no one was really talking about that much. And I was practicing on the East Coast, and really mediation and collaborative law just didn't have a home there yet. So when I got out of school, litigation was how you got divorced. I mean, it's just what was. So that's what I started doing. And I felt at the time when I first got into the practice that I was helping people. Divorce, as you mentioned, is a really hard time in people's lives. And it's a process you have to go through. And so litigation being the default, being the way that everyone did it, I thought I was helping people by being their guide and fighting for them and, helping them work their way through the system. But at some point, and I'll be honest, it didn't take that long. It took a few years, where you start to realize that the litigation process itself generates conflict. It's built on conflict. It's built on a system where people sue each other in court. What's more conflictual than "I'll see you in court," right? And what I realized pretty quickly is that's not a very good way to restructure families, right? To set them up for success as they go beyond that divorce, not financially, not emotionally, and not for their children to thrive. So that's what really shifted me from litigation to mediation.
That is so important. You said that litigation is conflict in itself. Like, yeah, exactly. And it doesn't matter if it's divorce or not. If somebody tells you, "I'll see you in court," they are literally starting a fight. Like, we are going to war. So, and I think back in the time, because I've been doing this for a little bit less than you. It's been 23 years or so for me, but collaborative was also like a big beginning, and there was not such a big push for mediation or collaborative or try to resolve this out of the courtroom, etc. But so people understand simple terms. Can you explain the difference between the three processes, the three ways that you could go about this process, so people understand how they are going to experience it? I think that is very important that individuals understand. Like you just said, litigation is war, is a fight. The way that individuals experience each of these ways, these trails that they can take, is very different. And I think we all tell them what litigation, mediation, that's a textbook definition. Can you explain a little bit, what would they really go through as they pick one or the other when they're starting this process?
And it's such a great way to put it, Gabriella. I'm glad you asked the question that way, because the key thing for people to understand is every divorce, doesn't matter which of these processes you choose, right? Which path you choose. Every divorce involves a series of discussions and agreements on a variety of topics, right? Your kids, your money, who's getting what, who's paying what, who's doing what. So that's the divorce, in a nutshell. And then these other things that we're talking about, litigation, collaborative approach to divorce, mediation, those are just different pathways to get to the same ending, which is you get divorced. They're pathways that give you a structure in how you're going to approach those conversations and making those decisions. So with litigation, that is the typical, as we've said, that's the typical lawsuit. That is how when someone rear ends you and, oh my neck, oh my back, that's how you handle it. When the guy putting your roof on does a horrible job and it still leaks, that's the breach of contract approach. It's all based on, finding information, going to court, and applying the law. So it's very coercive. It's very intended to be a legal process alone. Collaborative law is a great step forward because the number one thing collaborative law does, or a collaborative approach to divorce, is it takes the courtroom out of the mix, right? So it takes a lot of that coercive nature of litigation and brings it to a conference table where the idea is everyone's going to sit down and work it out, like I always say, like grown-ups, right? We may not like each other anymore. We may not trust each other the way we used to, but we are going to sit down and work this out in a collaborative fashion for the benefit of everyone. And we're going to do it fully supported by all of our professionals. Professionals like you, financial professionals, professionals like me, where we have attorneys at the table, perhaps therapists. And then mediation is a whole different ballgame, where you have the option of sitting down together in some format with a trained professional, your mediator, who's there to help the two of you have the discussions that you need to have and get to those agreements. Can you have attorneys? Yes. Do you have to? No. They can be in the room. They can be out of the room. Same with financial professionals. Same with all the other professionals. The key difference is the power to make the decisions that the couple retains. I see that as the key difference.
And I think that that is so important, because we know the moment you step one foot in the courtroom, you have this third party that knows nothing about you. They don't know your family, your needs, what your plans were, where you would like to see your kids going. They don't know any. And then it's impossible for someone to get to know all of that in 1, 2, 3 days. Well, sometimes some cases go 4 or 5 days in court, but still it's a totally different setting. And one of the main things is, you say, is the law. I always see litigation as is two attorneys are going to try to make the law work in their client's favor, right? And then we're going to spin it around.
That's our job.
Yeah, exactly. And advocate it. And then you wish that the person on the bench is going to pick who they believe, or who do they think that the law applies that way or the other, or who they believe is being truthful or not. And that happens not just with the attorneys, it happens with us. As like when I testify as an expert, I'm literally educated most of the time. This third party that doesn't really understand a lot about the numbers and the finances, they're doing the best they can, right? Because, that's their job. But they are really have to decide whether they believe me and my expertise, or the attorney's expertise, in order to make a decision that is going to affect a family for the rest of their lives. So in general, I do try to make sure my clients don't ever have to see a courtroom, right? Because I don't believe is the most constructive way to do it. I don't think that family law courtrooms are designed the way that they probably should, right? Like the courtroom was a criminal justice type of setting, and there is no such a thing as getting justice when you're sitting in a family law courtroom. That's how I literally see it. And, a lot of people feel like that's their moment when they're going to be vindicated. And it doesn't happen. It's just because the system is not set up for that to happen. And in collaborative and mediation, that's your opportunity. You have control over how you make these decisions. What are the decisions? And we're going to go a little bit more into each of them, but I want to talk about the financial angle, because I'm all about the numbers, right? So how does the process the individuals, the couples choose while they're going through this process impact their actual financial outcomes? And are there any patterns? Do you see that one process leads to better, worse results? I mean, you have, a wealth of experience in this. And also, I'm going to piggyback on that question. There is a perception that mediation and collaborative are cheaper and faster, which I honestly that's not the way that I feel like they should take approaching. We're going to go with the cheaper and the fastest. I feel like the approach should be, let's do what's best for our family. But does the process choice matter more when you're talking to high net worth individuals like my clients, business owners, physicians, or it doesn't? What do you feel about that from a financial perspective?
I agree with you. let me just say that at the top, right? I agree that from a financial perspective, you are universally, in almost every single solitary case, I can't think of one where you aren't, but I'm going to hedge my bets. Maybe there's some way where litigation is a better choice. But really, going with collaborative or going with a mediated approach to your divorce, especially for my clients when I was practicing, were high net worth and ultra high net worth as well. Collaborative and mediation approaches are going to still allow you to hone in on the complexities of, a diverse financial picture, but with all of the, experts that you need, with all of the due diligence, et cetera. But they're going to allow you to do it in a way that is as cost effective and time effective as possible. So what I mean by that, in the litigation system, everything is done according to rules, regulations, and laws, right? And it is set on, the discovery process is set on certain schedules. It's because it's very conflictual and coercive in its nature. People tend to be non-compliant with it. So you're constantly running off to court to look for compliance. They didn't give us the bank statement from July of 2020. We need that or we can't move forward. And because everything takes so much longer to get the court to move things forward, to get that compliance, everything financially gets out of date very quickly. And then sadly, you start the whole cycle over and over again. Whereas when you're working collaboratively, you're working in a cooperative setting like mediation, the discovery, the information comes together and can be reviewed in a much more efficient fashion, right? And efficiency matters. Do ultra high net worth and high net worth people care that it's going to cost a few more dollars to do their discovery or that? No, that's not necessarily the issue. But the big problem is time lapse leads to more conflict, right? It feeds the conflict cycle. So being efficient, being able to bring in the right professionals and being able to pull together the financial information in a way that allows everyone to find out what they need to know so they can make, as you talked about at the top, the right decisions financially is the key to everything.
I think that the time is one of the biggest ones too, because you are on hold. You are in this limbo. And depending on the jurisdiction, okay, different states have different rules that you cannot move forward. You cannot do anything until that's final. Some other states, like North Carolina, allows you to actually get a divorce. You can marry another person and still try to deal with the property from that previous marriage, which is crazy. But this put a lot of individuals on pause, right? You're in this limbo. You can't do anything. You can buy a house and you can sell the house and you can move money and you can literally do anything because you're trying to resolve this. And yes, you are at the mercy of the court, their schedule, and sometimes the other side, right? Because sometimes there's delays that maybe on purpose or not, or attorneys are busy or the parties are doing something else and there's just not following through in a timely fashion that would allow everyone potentially to move on, right? And keep some of their resources. So let's talk about collaborative. I have seen collaborative work. I work with one of the biggest firms that I work at some point as I work as a paralegal in my previous life. We work in collaborative. Sometimes it actually was successful. Many it wasn't. I think collaborative sounds ideal on paper. I think there's full transparency. There's a team approach. There's no court. And we're sitting here to fix this. We're trying to find a way to find a resolution, right? But I do believe also that this model is relying on the parties being fully transparent, is relying on the professionals that are working the case along with these parties. And you're correct, is a financial neutral. Sometimes there's a divorce coach, a parenting coordinator, etc., depending on all the different issues the couple has to resolve. But what happens when one of the sides is not playing by the rules? What happens when one of the professionals that are working in the case that are not clear on their role? what happens then? Because it feels like that is actually counterintuitive to what collaborative should work. Um, what do you see happening? Is collaborative the way to go, and how do you fix or approach when there's no fully transparency, when there's not really collaboration, or even the professionals don't understand their role in this process? That can damage the process. And I know there's a rule, right? We know that if you're working with this collaborative team and you move into the next phase of litigation, which it could be mediation, doesn't mean you're going to court, you cannot work with those professionals. So it's like, let's start all over, right? So
Yeah.
what do you see happening, truly happening with collaborative out in the world?
It varies, I will say, but you've said something that's really, really important here. I think that the professionals who are involved in a collaborative case are the most important part of a collaborative case. And I say that from the perspective of every single professional involved needs to know their lane, needs to understand the collaborative process, and needs to be able to work together as a cohesive group. And that's a lot of things to bring together when you're dealing with human beings. Right? I mean, it's just, it's one of those things where it's almost like everything has to come together perfectly for a collaborative case to work well. Now, have I seen it? Absolutely. Right? I have seen it in cases two ways where I find it most often works. One, when you hire one collaborative professional who's really good at this, and they have curated sort of a team of professionals that they work with routinely, who they know their lane, know how to do this, and are going to come together and nail it, right? And they do. I have a colleague here in Chicago. She's been on my podcast a bunch of times, and she does collaborative, and it's a beautiful thing to watch, right? The other way that I've seen it work is where the couple who are getting divorced, and this is generally with ultra high net worth couples that I find, take the time to work together and pick professionals that are absolutely the right ones to be in that particular position, right? So they get one who's just the right divorce attorney for each of them, who's a true collaborative. They get the right financial or financials. They get the right coach or coaches, etc. Those are the ways. Have I seen it not work? Yes, I have seen it the way that you're talking, you've mentioned, where either the parties get involved in a collaborative case but don't really behave or act collaboratively in accordance with their agreement. They don't want to give appropriate discovery. They don't want to be transparent. They don't want to come to the table and actually work collaboratively, or their emotions are driving them to such an extent they're unable to do that. And I have, unfortunately, there are professionals out there who call themselves collaborative professionals who I don't know that they really are. They're either not appropriately collaboratively trained, or it takes more than training. It takes a mindset. And even if you've been trained, you need to have the mindset to do a good job as a collaborative professional.
That is, I'm glad you said that, because I see that all the time. Collaborative is in itself is, and again, like mediation, you can switch the way you do mediation. You can do with attorneys, you can do without attorneys, you can do just the neutral, you can do them several ways, but collaborative has to have a very specific format. And the individuals have to come to the table, those that are advocating for their clients too, with that same mentality when they come to the table. And I sometimes wonder, because you have those that are calling themselves collaborative attorneys, but they're not. And then you have the ones that are going too much onto the collaborative side. And I wonder, is there a particular pressure on some of these professionals that we need to resolve this, because collaborative cannot fail and we are supposed to find a resolution? That's why we're doing collaborative, and put in more pressure than the parties need. Because I am a big fan of the emotions behind this, and not from a divorce coach perspective of we gotta regulate our emotions. From a financial point of view, money is emotional. Aside from
Yep.
everything else you're going through the divorce, you're making these decisions under so much pressure, fear, overwhelm. There's so many things that are going to affect just the money portion of one part. And adding pressure to it, I think, is because we need to resolve it because it's collaborative. So we need to kind of find a resolution. I feel that that creates more pressure for everyone involved. And sometimes there is the situations where the one spouse is really not as savvy potentially financially, and they need the extra support. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Susan, and you can tell me if you don't want to, but I do see the need sometimes for a financial advocate. You have your attorneys advocating for you, right? On a certain level, on the collaborative way. A lot of the times I feel some of the spouses, they just need a little bit more that the financial neutral cannot give them, because the financial neutral is neutral, right? So they're there to look at numbers, bring reports, say this is what we have, this is what it could be, but they can really sit with this individual and explain their choices, their needs, where are they going, what. So why is there? I've seen it personally, okay, and it may not be the general rule, but it's happened to me where I am told that I cannot be helping an individual because you're going through the collaborative process. They can have a financial advocate. That to me is a problem. I'm not saying you need one in each case. I'm saying it's part of the collaboration, right? Okay, so if we want to make these decisions, let's bring to the table everything we need. Like we bring a coach or we bring a parenting coordinator, right? We bring everyone we need so everyone can have a fair shot at making these decisions. What do you think about that? And you can say, no, don't do this to me, Gabriella. It's okay.
No, so let me make a guess that it was an attorney who said that you couldn't have a financial advocate.
100%, always attorneys, yes.
So many thoughts on this. So let me say at the beginning, and I understand why an attorney might say that. So, because you used a very particular term for the role. You said financial advocate. And I can see as an attorney who our role is advocacy, right? That is our one, we're there to give legal advice and to advocate for our client. So I could see why an attorney might be hesitant to have another person taking on an advocacy role, because it's very difficult to have two advocates in one role. It's bifurcating a role, which may not be the best use or the best approach. However, I 100% agree with you that there is very often one party in the divorce who has less financial savvy than the other. Very often, there is one party who needs the support of a financial advisor for their particular interests, right? Someone to give them information so that when decisions need to be made, and there are always decisions to be made, that is what divorce is. It's a series of decisions that need to be made. They have the wherewithal and the emotional certitude to be able to do that. And so I have always advocated, to use that term, but I have always advocated for curating a team of professionals that suit that particular divorce, right? So this is where I diverge from the collaborative model that's very rigid. I think that parties are better suited with loosening the rigidity a bit to bring in the professionals that are needed in that particular case. So you said something very important. Not every case is going to need this, financial person to advise just one of the parties, but a lot of them will. And this is how I've always explained it, whichever role I'm taking, if I'm the advocate for one of the parties or if I'm their mediator, because I've acted in both roles. So understand, as their advocate, I'm talking to my one client about why this is a good idea. If I'm the mediator, I'm talking to both people getting divorced about why this is a good idea. it doesn't really matter, because it's a good idea for the entirety of the process. Because if one person in this divorce, so whether I'm representing you, the person who doesn't feel they have the financial savvy, or the person who does have it, making sure the person who doesn't have support is critical to both of them, because they will never pull the trigger on an agreement unless they have the support. And so it's equally important to both of them, because there's nothing more frustrating than putting a good deal on the table and the other person can't or won't accept it because they don't understand that it's a good deal, right? And that's what everyone in this process needs to understand. By getting the person with less knowledge more support, you support both of them into getting to resolution. And that's the key.
I love that you said that, because that is so important. I do believe that the information and the education allows individuals to make decisions. You cannot make decisions when you feel you don't have the support that you need. So I love that. And I wish that collaborative would be a little bit more flexible. And you're absolutely right. It's always the attorneys. I always got to tell you this, though. I have worked for attorneys for more than 15 years. Okay. I'm surrounded by divorce attorneys, my personal life, all divorce attorneys in my life. I feel like I'm in this world all the time. And I do understand their fears. I usually try to come to them and explain to them my role would not be to disrupt the process or start a fight or it's more about informing, and I don't even have to be part of the conversations. I just need to educate the one party, right? That's my goal as a, maybe we won't say advocate, but maybe an educator on the finances. Maybe that will be the word. So I think that if individuals have the information and they feel supported in this and not push or ambush to make decisions they don't understand, they will make the decisions and things will be resolved. I have seen it as a mediator. I have seen it the last 23 years. So glad we talk about that, because that's like a little thing here in my neck. Anyway, let's go a little bit to mediation, because I think mediation is very important too. You shift from being a litigator to mediation. So why mediation is better than collaborative, even for some couples? Because there's a little bit distinct what we do as mediators or what you do when you are in a mediation setting that is not collaborative. So what makes it work for some couples that they can truly do not go through the collaborative process for some reason? What is it? What mediation makes it work? And then the opposite. When would someone should not go through this process through mediation? What will make that you say, I don't think this is for you. I don't think you're going to reach the solutions that you need in the time that will be good for your family going through this process?
First, let's start with why mediation, is the process I prefer for almost anyone to go through divorce.
Me too.
Yeah, right. I mean, if someone comes to me, if a member of my family were getting divorced, I would urge them to go to mediation. I just would. And that is because collaborative and litigation are still very past focused processes, right? They are very much focused on what happened during the past, who earned what, who did this, who did that, all on the past, and they are not future focused. Mediation is almost entirely future focused. It is there to help you problem solve, identify what the issues are that you need to resolve, help you come up with the best possible solutions for everyone. So you work together to do that and get you to a place where you can move forward. And most importantly, where the two parties who are getting divorced are the most important people in the room. They're running the show and they're the only ones making decisions about, by the way, their lives, no one else's lives, right? Their children's, right? But none of the professionals in the room should be making the decisions, not the man or woman in the robe, not the attorneys, not the financials, not the coaches. The two people getting divorced should be making the decisions. And mediation is the process that honors that best. It's also the process, to what we were just talking about with collaborative, that is the most able to be curated and create a bespoke team that works for each individual couple getting divorced and their family. It's very much centered on bringing in the right professionals at the right time to do what they need to do so that those two people can make the decisions they need to make for their family to move forward. And that future focus makes all the difference. When you are focused on the past, who did what, who earned what, who spent what, you are just going to feed the conflict cycle. And that's just a spiral down instead of a climb up and out of what you called earlier, this divorce limbo that you're in. You want to get beyond the divorce. You want to get beyond the divorce. You do not want to wallow in the limbo of divorce. Mediation is the process that's going to get you there. Is it easy? You're a mediator. What would you say?
Oh, no, it's not easy. It's very difficult.
It's not easy.
It's not easy at all.
It is not, right?
Not easy.
But the people who come through mediation come through in a better place, better able to move forward with their lives. Decisions that they've made are decisions they can live with. They're better educated about why they made those decisions, and they have worked cooperatively with the other party to come to those decisions. And so they are the ones who are almost always better able to move forward into a better future.
I love that you say that. I never even put it that way, but it's future focus. I can't say that word too much in my accent, but I love that because that's how it works. And you said it's hard. It doesn't mean, we're going to mediation, we agree on everything, we're going to be great. No, it's not going to happen that way. There's a lot of emotions that come out sometimes. I was mediating for a couple and oh my God, and they were both Italian, and that room was, and at some point you just have to let them say what they want to say, get it out, and then they calm down, and they were like, okay, well, let's talk through it. Let's talk through this process. How is that going to look like going forward? Because it doesn't matter what 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you put in an account, $5. Like, it's literally you can't base this future into that happens. So I love that you say it that way. Okay, litigation. We don't promote it. We don't like it. It's not really ideal. And it has a bad reputation on top of what litigation truly is, what we're talking in the beginning, right? But sometimes that's the only option, right? Because sometimes individuals have no other recourse than ask the court to make decisions because of various reasons, right? We talk about discovery, documents are not provided, etc. Maybe there's issues with custody you can't agree on. Maybe there's medical decisions have to be made on the kids. So sometimes you do have to go through litigation. Right?
You do, but you phrased this in the right order, right? So that's the problem with litigation. Litigation is, for so many people, the default. They go there first. They go there as if that's the way you get divorced. You just put it the right way. If you can't do this any other way, that's when you go to litigation. It is your last choice. It is the last option. And by the way, it's always there. Litigation doesn't go away. It's not an option that gets pulled out from under you. So if you try mediation, if you try collaborative, if you try the kitchen table to work this out in talking to your partner and it won't work, you can always go to litigation. Because there are absolutely those cases, and there are absolutely those people who just won't do what they're supposed to do. And when you have that situation and people don't live up to their word, they are untrustworthy, they lie, they do things they're not supposed to do, they put people at risk, they put money at risk. In those instances, that is when you need a judge to make orders. And it does happen, but I will tell you, it is a tiny percentage of cases that need that.
Sometimes you just need to go to litigation. You need to file the lawsuit to bring someone on the table and try to find a resolution. That happens a lot. Sometimes I tell my clients, well, if you have to, we talk to the attorneys, we have a strategy. A lot of the times when that lawsuit gets filed, the other side comes to the table, and then we can have a conversation and we can start looking through resolutions. So just because you started doesn't mean you can stop it if you find a resolution as well. I think that that's very important, that maybe that's your recourse, but then something shifts, or there's a new attorney involved, or something that makes them come back to the conversation. You can always have that conversation until you are there at your trial in front of a judge. And some people even resolve it outside in the conference room, in the courtroom, while the judge is taking a break. So there's always the opportunity for you to resolve the case in a different way. So Susan, we cover a lot, and I try to make it very simple for those individuals that, we don't want to use the big words, but if someone is starting this process, right? We are in January, we're recording in January, this will be live in February. There's still going to be a lot of people making these decisions. What should they ask their attorney, perhaps, or themselves, before they choose a path? And what is the one piece of advice you would give them when they're trying to decide their path? Like, what should they consider before they commit to one or the other in this process?
So I would say first, if you are in those early days of thinking about divorce, this is the time to take a deep breath and do nothing other than get yourself educated on what we're talking about here. Vice versa, do not run out and go hire an attorney, because that is what most people do. And by the way, my colleagues out there are cringing. They hate that I say this, but I do think that the biggest mistakes happen in the earliest days of the divorce process, when people are extremely emotional. The two emotions they feel are fear and anger. Fear and anger, two sides of the same coin, I think. But when fear and or anger drive you to hire an attorney, you are going to hire the litigator. You are going to hire the one who says, I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to protect you. They're going to say all those right words. And that is going to take you down what you and I were just talking about a minute ago as being your last choice as your first choice. So the key thing, the number one thing I would say to everyone today, if they're in that position, is do not hire an attorney right now, and get educated, get further educated. We have talked about these 3 different ways you can go through the divorce process, but I want you to go even deeper. I want you to do some exploration and learning more and get more educated on mediation. Talk to some mediators, not 1, not 2, talk to 3 mediators. Talk to them about the process, talk to them about what it looks like. If you're interested in collaborative, don't talk to 1 collaborative attorney, talk to 3 collaborative attorneys. I always say 3 is better. Don't necessarily start with the litigators, but get educated, take some deep breaths. I'm going to say another thing. It's not really on point to what we've been talking about with finances, but I do always say, get yourself a divorce coach to help you with your emotional content right now. And then when you're ready, when you're calmer, when you're able to think more rationally, then you make a decision about the process and about the professionals you hire.
I love that you said that. And I know attorneys don't like when I say, and I say it all the time, you cannot run to the attorney's office and hire them before you do or talk to any of the other. And the divorce coach, I feel like that is the first one. Those emotions have to be regulated. And then even the numbers, start collecting information. You need to understand what's happening out there. And then you go to the attorney, because you have no idea how many people come and say, oh, I need a bulldog attorney because he's going to try to do this or she's going to try to do that. We don't know what she's going to or he is going to try to do. We don't really know. And you don't know either. And if you start the fight first, well, then we don't know if they were going to, but then they have to defend themselves, basically. You put that situation in that position. So I love that. Susan, I love our conversation. Please tell us where we can find you. We're going to put all the links, but I know the biggest one is Divorce and Beyond, your podcast, which is a gold mine of information, professionals, topics. I think that is, they should start here and then go to your podcast. That's what I will say. Go there. Everybody is there. I feel like information and education, when you start thinking about this, even when you start thinking that's where you're going to end up, you should start with the information. So where can you tell us where we can find you, where they can reach out to you, and we will put everything in the notes anyway.
Well, thank you. And yes, the podcast Divorce and Beyond is really the best place. We've been focusing, as you are, on the early days of divorce as we're sitting here in divorce season. So I have a number of episodes right now that are very much focused on these topics we're talking about. You can go to divorceandbeyondpod.com. I'm really excited because now we have over 400 episodes, and we just launched a brand new search function on the website. So you can just go onto the website, put in your topic, put in Gabriella's name and find her episode. You can you can put any guest in, any topic, and it's going to pull up the best topics for you. So, and we have a ton of other resources. We do have a really good one with top 10 questions to ask a potential mediator on the website. So if anyone's interested in mediating, it's a great script for interviewing your first mediators.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, please, everyone that is listening, I will highly recommend you go and follow Susan's podcast. I think she's a wealth of information, and is when you need it the most. And yes, especially during these times where everybody is really trying to decide what they're going to do after the holidays. So thank you very much, Susan.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your thoughts with us and my audience. And thank you to those that are listening. If you know anyone that is starting to think about this, or they're even in the midst of it, please share this episode with them. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. If you're going through a separation or divorce, please contact me through my website at everafterwealth.com. I would love to be a resource and partner as you navigate this season and prepare for your financial future. I'll see you in the next episode.